So welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm your host, Aloise.life Middleton. I'm a transformational teacher and coach. And this week we are talking about how you can take your power back. Well, thank you first of all for listening. Hopefully you guys are regular listeners. If you haven't already, I really encourage you to go back and listen to a couple of podcasts I've done over the course of the last month. Basically since Corona kicked off, I have been giving you my take on what is happening in the world. Now, I do hear, because obviously I'm in lots and lots of different groups, and I know that, people are at different points. Everybody's at a different consciousness level with this. And some people are really up and down because obviously it's quite a sort of scary time, really. If you don't have this higher view that this is a great awakening for humanity, it can be a really scary, lonely place. So I would just like to, if you're a first-time listener, thank you so much for listening, but I would really encourage you to go back and listen to a couple of my podcasts called The Great Awakening 1. That I did just as Corona started, and The Great Awakening 2. And then my most recent solo cast was all about becoming 5D, because what's happening at the moment on the planet is you've got different people living into different paradigms and living into essentially different densities. So if you're in the mainstream media, if you're somebody like my family, essentially their paradigm is controlled by the mainstream media. So they are living in this world of coronavirus. You're seeing people walk around with masks. Everybody's in that kind of paradigm. If you're in the fourth dimension or fourth density, you're more in the truth zone. You're more looking for answers. You're part of the QAnon movement. You're Googling stuff left, right, and center, which all of us need to do, by the way. And if you're in the fifth dimension, you're very much about welcoming in this new paradigm. You're very much ascending to unity consciousness. Now, this episode is all about taking your power back. For us to all ascend to that higher level, it's really important that we do the 3 steps that I'm going to be sharing with you in this podcast. So, take your power back. Let's think about that. Do you feel that you are in your power? Be honest. Do you feel that you are somebody that understands and knows that they create their own reality? Do you feel that you are a powerful human being? Now, the chances are you probably said no to one of those questions. And the reason you've probably said no is we are totally stripped of our power from the day we're born. We give our authority away. It's either to our caregivers, to our parents, to teachers. We're told to behave. When we're younger, we very much think life happens to us, not for us. So what do I mean that life happens to us? Well, quite often when we're younger, we can fall into the trap or be in a trap of, oh, well, it's not my fault. My parents didn't send me to the right school. Or it's not my fault. My parents didn't buy me this. Or my parents weren't rich enough. Or it's not everything's somebody else's fault. And we're also taught, that we're not important. We're taught to look up to celebrities. We're taught to give our power away. We're taught to idolize people. We're not taught to believe in ourselves. I would say 99% of people that come through my Dharma Life Academy program think they're not enough. We all think we are not good enough. We all think we're not clever enough. We're not pretty enough. We're not thin enough. We're not, you name it, the list could go on. And that is because of how we have been indoctrinated and how we've been basically educated out of our magic. Our education system very much teaches us to sort of play small. Most of us are scared to speak up. Again, when everybody comes through the Dharma Life Academy program, nobody wants to do videos, just purely because we're so scared of fucking up, excuse my French, or we're so scared of being made to be wrong or standing out. Like, I'll be totally honest, my journey in being able to even do the work I'm doing now, most of it has having to fight through my own insecurities. I still hate having my photograph taken. I'm still not a massive fan of it. I love doing solar casts and I love doing training and stuff because I feel like I'm in my flow with that. But that's taken me time. I remember my first podcast was awful. I remember being really nervous when I first started coaching. That's completely normal. But that is because society has really kept us in this small place, this low vibrational place. Now, when we're in a low vibrational place, a couple of things happen. When we're kind of scared, fearful, just surviving, we're easier to control. When we're in this lower vibration, we're also not connected to ourselves spiritually. Our emotions, when we are in a high vibrational state, they are the things that connect us to our higher chakras and our spirit. For a long time, I was depressed and I was walking around distracting myself with drugs, alcohol, all because I just felt so disconnected. And of course, whilst I was in that place, I wasn't connected to my higher self. I wasn't connected to my soul. I wasn't connected to my mission. I wasn't in my personal sovereignty. I didn't understand how powerful I was. Now, that's been very useful for the people who have been running the world. So if you've listened to my other podcast, we've talked about in the past podcast how if you look at how this planet is set up, 1% of the planet own the planet. What do I mean by that? Well, 70 million people, that's 1%. I think that's 1% of 7 billion. 700 million? 700, my maths is terrible. But essentially, that number of people own the world, own the planet. Why isn't the wealth spread equally across this planet? And that is the question that is coming up now for us all to look at. A lot of what is happening at the moment, this is why I say it's the Great Awakening, because your awakenings don't happen when everything's going well. Usually you spiritually awaken when things are going wrong because you start to look for answers outside of your normal narrative. So that is what is happening at the moment. At the moment, our collective shadow is coming up for us to look at. A lot of information is surfacing that hasn't been seen before. The behavior of these people, how they've been controlling us and how they've been making money from us is really coming up for people to see. People are questioning the mainstream media. People are questioning the narrative because they're starting to see gaps. There's glitches in the matrix is one way of looking at it. So when we are in a lower level vibration, we're not spiritually connected. We're not in our power. Okay. So remember, this episode is all about us taking our power back. So for us to ascend, for us all to go to the fifth dimension, which is the next step for humanity, the golden age, we have to get to a critical point of spiritual awakening. We have to get to a critical mass of people questioning the narrative, waking up, also taking their power back. For us to ascend, we've got to go together. You may have seen the hashtag WW1WGA. Where we go one, we go all. For all of us to ascend as human beings, as a collective, we've got to go together. And that means that we need to understand that you are me and I am you. What's happening at the moment is we've got huge amounts of polarity. We've got people living at this incredible level, rich of the rich, and we've got people, who are homeless and people in third world countries. That can't go on. So it's really important that now everybody listening to this starts to have a voice, starts to have an opinion. Because if you don't have an opinion, if you don't have any research, if you don't start to take your power back, you're essentially complicit in other people doing what they've been doing for the last 300,000 years. So now is the time for us to take our power back. Now, in Dharma, we talk about this. We help you uncover your purpose. We help you understand your uniqueness. We help you understand that everybody has a part to play in this big tapestry of life. Now, you might think, who am I to be able to do anything? Now, actually, now is your time. You're listening to this podcast. Share this podcast. Introduce it to a friend. you're curious about what I'm saying, go and listen to the other podcasts, go and do some research on YouTube. The first step in us taking our power back is to understand that we are powerful human creators and how powerful human beings. And then from there, it's really understanding what's happening on the planet at the moment. Because it isn't fair, it isn't integrated, it isn't for the best of humanity. It's service to self. The 1% are serving themselves, and you and I are complicit because we're not doing anything about it. So over the next 4 years, you are going to see the old structures break down. So when I say the old structures, you're going to see the banking system fall apart. We're already looking at our fiscal banking system that's being propped up at the moment, but it will go under. You're looking at the World Health Organization, the funding's being taken away. Lots of the older institutions that were actually service to self and corrupt are starting to fall away. So your step in this process, your step in ascension, your step in becoming 5D, the first step you're going to do is to understand what's happening on your planet. We have been asleep, many of us. Like, my awakening has happened in stages. I remember my first awakening was 28, and then I had another level of it at about 30, 32. And then, as I said to you on the previous podcast, I completely tuned out the mainstream media because I just knew my work was to help others do their Dharma and wake people up to their spiritual path. And then in the last 6 months, I've had another amazing awakening because the level of detail that is now being shown to us about how we've been manipulated and how we've been controlled is incredible. So, as ever, take what resonates and the rest you leave. But I do really encourage you to go and do your own research, because now is your time to make your decision. Listen to people that you respect and resonate with, but at the same time, this is ultimately about your power. This is not about my opinion and you accepting my opinion. This is about me sparking interest in you and you going out there and making and forming your own decisions. So that is all to do with step 1. That is you understanding what the agenda is. What's your opinion on vaccines? Are you pro or are you anti? What is your opinion on the coronavirus? Don't just accept what your mum's telling you, what your dad's telling you, what your partner's telling you. What do you think? Again, depending on where we're at in our development, if we're younger, we tend to take on the beliefs of our parent, take on the beliefs of our partner, just because it's easier, to be honest with you. And we may not quite know what we're looking at. But now with YouTube, you can go and Google things left, right, and center. And if you want any guidance, then you can always ask me. I can point you in the right direction. So step 1 in taking our power back is really understanding that we are powerful, powerful sovereign beings. Step 2 is making a declaration that you do not consent for the way the world is working anymore. So what do I mean by that? Well, by us not doing anything, we're complicit. I've said that we're kind of in agreement that actually it's okay for us to be to the world to look the way it's what looked. Now, don't forget, the world has been healing whilst everything has been stopped. All of the reports of dolphins and the canals being cleaner and the air pollution, the world will never be the same again. And we should not want it to be the same world again. The good thing that came out of the coronavirus was it stopped human beings' frenetic activity. We need to demand as a human race that now we don't want our world to go back to the way it was before. So how do you do that? You do need to make a declaration of sovereignty, because the powers that be at the moment cannot control us. They can only control us if we are complicit, if we don't say anything. If we take our power back and if we make a declaration of sovereignty, and that just means that you're not willing to continue them doing what they're doing to you. So take a moment, you can do this privately to yourself. You can write a letter. You can say, I don't like the way the world is looking. I want to claim back my power, and I'm not giving you permission to run the world anymore and do the things that you've been doing. Or you can say something on your Instagram, or you can make a podcast like I'm making, or you can write a post, or you can write a blog post, or you can walk out in the garden and you can say it in the garden. An important part of truly being free is the responsibility to be highly discerning about the ideas, beliefs, and attitudes that we choose to accept from society. We must be independent minded and confident enough to form our own ideas. Now, unfortunately, society pressures us to conform. So we must not conform blindly as everything starts to go back to normal. We need to do the petitions to the government for them to look into 5G. We need to essentially question our experts and what we believe. You know, for so long we've had this culture of celebrities and these people are better than us, and they're not. Everybody is the same. So really look at how you give your power away, who you look up to, who you kind of worship. Inadvertently you're thinking that they're better than you, and they're not. Doing so, we give our power away, and that allows those powers that be to create a world that serves them. So our personal sovereignty is so important. If we don't start forming our own beliefs and trusting our inner knowledge and standing for what we know in our hearts, our world is not going to be here for our kids. Now, this might sound a bit depressing and a bit dramatic, but it's, I think it's so important. Like, the tendency has been, who am I to do that? A little old me. But actually, when you understand the Dharmic teachings, you understand that we're all part of the solution. We're all part of the problem, but we're all part of the solution. And you can definitely do your bit. And the thing that we've got, this is the little secret that hopefully you've cottoned onto, but you might not have gone. We have got strength in numbers. When we come together as a collective, it's powerful. They can't separate us. We've allowed them essentially to hijack our government, our media, our beliefs. And now it's time to take all of those things back. So that's step 2. Do a little declaration to yourself, to the external world, to see what calls you, but a declaration of sovereignty, basically saying that you are not willing for the situation on the planet to continue anymore, and that you refuse to give away your power, and you're claiming your personal sovereignty. So the final step, which is really, really important, this process came from a lady called Magenta Pixie, who, if you're kind of more advanced in your spiritual journey, I would definitely go and check her out. She's incredible. Learned so much from that lady. This process actually came from her, and I think it's really important that you guys go and check her out. But the final step is forgiveness and love. So let's talk about forgiveness and love, because you might think, hold on, why am I going to be forgiving people who basically have been running the world and doing it in a corrupt, horrible way? Now think about this. Step back for a moment. Have you ever carried a grudge or had a grudge against somebody that you disliked or that you hated? Now, the problem with carrying around a lot of hate and anger is actually the only person you're hindering is yourself. Now, on some level, and this is quite a complicated thing to get your head around, but remember, unity consciousness is all about us understanding that we're all interconnected and that I am you and you are me. And so on some level, these people are just part of our shadow. They're part of us. And you might say, well, there's no way I'd ever do that and I'd ever behave like that. But they're just playing that part. And it's really important that we are able to forgive them. Essentially, they are just our collective shadow. And we haven't really wanted to look at it as a collective before now, and now we are. So we must forgive these people, because when we forgive, we liberate our soul. When you forgive, it removes any fear, any anger, any baggage that you've got. If we withhold forgiveness, it keeps alive the emotions of hurt, anger, and blame. So by doing this process in these 3 steps, we are able to essentially shift our vibrations and integrate into this fifth dimension. So think about what's happening here is you've probably had quite a sharp awakening, on what's happening in the last couple of months. How can you forgive people that you've just discovered are doing horrible things on the planet? Well, important that you look at what they've given you and the gratitude that has come from the process. So they've been huge catalysts for growth for all of us. So time to forgive these people. It really is an amazing time to be alive on the planet. And I hope you can see that. And I hope you can stay in this positive emotional vibration. I suppose it's really important that when you're going through these steps, as the emotions come up, that you feel them, that you integrate them. Because when you go and do your own research, it's layered. So it's like an onion. You might find one piece of information, then you might go and look at something else, and then something else. And once you start to really see what's been happening behind closed doors, it is painful, it is dark, it isn't nice. But please do not just push those emotions away. Please make sure you integrate them and feel them. Really important that we feel our feelings. This isn't a real amazing time to be alive. I know I keep saying it, but it genuinely is. It's incredible. I truly believe that we came here to be here at this time, and we can't ascend whilst we're in polarity. We can't go into the fifth dimension, into this golden age, whilst we have so many people living at different levels. So our job as light workers, if you're listening to this podcast, your job's to plant seeds for other people. If they're not quite ready for this podcast, then start them with a gentler podcast. But plant seeds so that other people are waking up, because we do have to get to a critical mass of people not only awakening spiritually, but also integrating the shadow and doing the process that we're talking about on this podcast. We can't ascend while we're in polarity. So remember that when we forgive, we liberate the soul. All of that energy that we were using to store the anger, to store the hate, to store the fear is transmuted. And we shift and we go higher. And we go higher as a collective. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this podcast. It makes my day when people let me know that they're listening. I can see you're listening, but it makes my day to know that what you got from this podcast, how you're understanding things, how you're doing with things. I was also thinking about doing a kind of interactive podcast as well. If people wanted to send in questions, I could definitely answer the questions. So if you've got any questions, please do let me know. But remember, it's an exciting time to be alive on the planet. And as I said, if you're looking for a community to do this work with, we are going to be relaunching a soft launch of the new platform that I'm going to be creating, the Dharma Life Academy, in probably June. So if you're interested, as I said, it's going to be so affordable now. It's a monthly subscription. So there's no barrier to entry. And it's amazing being part of a community where you're shifting and changing your vibration and creating your dream life. Like I think I've said to you, we've got some incredible examples of people who never thought that it'd be possible for them to live the lives that they're living now. Houses being bought, paintings being exhibited at incredible art galleries, health centres and workshops happening, and all sorts of amazing things just coming out of the work that we're doing together. So come and join us. We want more people in our beautiful Dharma family. You're more than welcome. And I want to thank you once again for listening to this podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the Dharma Life podcast. I do hope you enjoyed this episode. Please come over and say hello on my Instagram, our Facebook group, and also please let me know what you thought. So if you are listening, please take a screenshot of the podcast that you are listening to. Tag me on Instagram and I will reshare your post, and please let me know what it is that you got out of today's episode. Remember, when we do our Dharma, we are happier, healthier, we live longer, and we have a deep sense of unshakable inner peace.